All right, so we should be live. So just wanted to say welcome to everybody back to another Marauder Monday. And tonight we have the Angry Prepper here with us. And if you don't know about the Angry Prepper, then I don't know where you've been, because he's definitely on a certain level of infamy around the prepper community, I would say. So I just wanted to mention that and welcome you to our show tonight. Thanks for being here, and thanks for bringing like a different point of view and perspective to preparedness, and trying to get different people and other, mindsets involved with the whole community. What would you say is one of like the leading reasons that kind of pushed you to preparedness?
What pushed me to preparedness?
Yeah.
It was a book I read a long time ago. Probably 11, 12 years ago now. And it was called the 1 Second After.
Okay.
Right. So that book got me started into wanting to prepare. But there was a specific part in the book where the main character, I forgot his name, was driving through town and he was watching people starve. People weren't ready. He was, because of his line of job before they ended up in that boat, if you will. And I remember him saying, I wish I would have bought more dog food for the dogs, and he wished he would have gotten more food in general. And I was like, shit, man, that scene stuck out. And then watching the kids starve and things like that, I'm like, well, I don't want my kids to starve. But later down the line, after I got prepared, it led to this question: can you watch other kids starve that are not yours?
That's a good question, and that's kind of cool. Everybody kind of has like a different like starting point for what got them involved in preparedness. And just wanted to kind of get this started tonight for everybody. If you're out there and you guys can hear us, please let me know if the audio is good, the visual is good, if there's anything else you guys need from us. And thank you all for being here. It's definitely a good time here we're having on Mondays lately. So there's a lot going on, and clearly around the world right now, I mean, you can pick and choose from just about any facet of what's happening out there and find something that's relevant to preparedness. If you guys don't know, I mean, the Angry Prepper is in New York City, which means, he has a different set of challenges when it comes to being prepared. He has to deal with the idea of being in an urban environment during any kind of an emergency or a crisis. With that being said, with everything that's happening right now in the world, do you feel that you would be involved with like what you might call the first wave of like an SHTF style situation?
Yeah, I think well, you know what? Maybe not, because the way certain cities are designed, not all, certain cities are taken care of before, let's say, I don't know, a town upstate New York, right? And so food will come here first, and I would say more plentiful than a small town up in the Catskill Mountains, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we would see it here first unless a curveball happened, unless, for example, the Chinese attacked or a nuclear attack. That's where we would see the shit hit the fan first.
Okay.
But depends on when it comes to, like, for example, food shortage. I think we will see that last here. I don't think we would see that first, only because people are telling me they're seeing a food shortage in different parts of America, but a lot of people who live near major cities or in major cities are not seeing it yet, right? And even through COVID, we saw some food shortage or lack of food on the shelves. Sorry, but we didn't see anything fucking incredibly bad. Not like other places where their supermarkets went almost a week and a half without restocking, whereas we went probably about a week before we restocked.
No, that makes sense. So, basically based on the population and the amount of just money that's in the urban areas, you would assume there's some priority there when it comes to federal aid and, stockpiles and everything else that the government would try to pull out in order to keep the peace, I would assume.
Right.
I think we would all definitely agree that the likelihood of, mass unrest is a little bit higher in an urban environment. But
Yes.
yeah, for the supply chain and stuff, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously most big cities are located in like port towns and have access to a lot of the goods that are shipped in before anybody else. So that's a good point, actually. And I think a lot of people look at, the city as being like a big negative and having no benefit in the sense of preparedness. But I think it's good to take a look at both sides of it, sometimes, and understand that it's not just one way or the other,
Well, yeah, and it's. I mean, listen, there's a giant negative sign versus the small plus sign that the city has, but yeah, but there was, for example, a couple years ago, the EBT machine. You know what that is, right?
Yep.
Okay, right. So the EBT machine, for those that don't know what an EBT machine is, it's pretty much a welfare machine where you swipe your card, it has money on it. Before, I don't know when they passed it, but you were able to shop with that now for clothing, whereas before it was just food. So a couple years back, the EBT machines went down in the city, and there were skirmishes of problems in front of stores because they said, "Oh, the EBT machine's down. We can't process any payment." And they went fucking ballistics. It was 2 stores out in the Bronx, actually. And that was just for clothing. And shit clothing, I might add, but nonetheless clothing. And they went ballistic. So now imagine on a grand scale, right, where now you can't get food. Forget about clothes. Now food. Now, obviously, when food stops coming in or the EBT machine stops working during the shit hits the fan scenario, you're going to have a nuclear bomb go off, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And obviously, that's an interesting example of when, people that generally rely on the government aid suddenly get it cut off, and how they react to that is definitely something worth taking a look at. And right now, with everything happening in the world, there's a lot going on in the sense of government aid, stimulus, advanced tax credits, everything else. So, since you mentioned that and kind of just moving into that territory, with all this aid that's being handed out, with the eviction moratoriums being, perpetually extended and all this stuff happening, if all of that runs out, if things just stop at some point because they can't afford to keep going, or, whatever moratorium it is finally ends, or whatever's keeping people afloat, if that runs out, then do we see that same behavior on like a large scale basis compared to just in like one urban environment?
If that, what you explained, happens in the city, like I said, it would be nothing short of a nuclear bomb here. I mean, everything and everyone would, the culture of the city, at least New York City, I can't speak for other cities. I know that the cultures are different and the demographic is different, but here in the city, most people are out for themselves. That being said, if that was to happen, I would all but guarantee people would be turning on each other. You couldn't go outside for anything. I mean, I would venture not to live stream that kind of shit going down in the city because it would be that bad. We're talking about shooting, stabbings, baseball bats, the whole 9 yards. It would make the summer of 2020 look like a picnic. So if that, like I said, if that happens, I would hope people know that can happen here in the city, and that being that it can happen, listen, the option to getting ready is great. Prepare. But the bigger reality is you have to leave. You can't stay here. You can't stay here with the people here in the city. You're going to see people turn on you that you would have never thought in a million years turning. You're going to see people who you swore were like good dudes and good women, turning up to scumbags. But then you're going to see scumbags who you thought were scumbags turn into good guys. So, but there's not going to be much of that. I mean, guys, we saw what the riots looked like. People were out for themselves. They took that as the opportunity to burn stores down and loot them, and then do what they want and kill people in the street because there were no cops around. So that was on that. I hate to say it was on a smaller scale. When you're talking about what you're talking about, that's the grand scale. That's the big show, and that would be absolutely terrifying for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think that for a lot of people that might be in different environments, it's easy to say things like you hear out there in other channels, like, "Oh, get rid of the bug out bag. You don't need it. It's a dumb idea to bug out." But if you're not in a city, of course, it's easier to feel that way. But I'm sure in your situation, bug out bags are one of the most important things you have in your arsenal.
Yeah, you know what? A lot of people, I don't know where this anti-bug out bag movement started, but it's short-sighted and stupid. So,
Yeah.
but whoever I offend with that, so be it, man. Because it's a stupid ideology. Because prepping is just that. You could live in the sticks somewhere and be heavily secured, and know how to take out the bad guys approaching your place and all this other good stuff. But there's still the curveball things to happen, like your house being set aflames. All right, you take that stuff, you take the bug out bags, and you move it outside. I mean, if you lived in a house like that, you'd probably have your bug out bags like tucked in the woods behind, not behind, but I would say, yeah, behind your home or towards your exit strategy, wherever your path is to getting out of there. That's where you will probably have your bug out bags, in a winterized bag of some sort, a duffel bag, a garbage bag, contractor bags. You would leave it out there so that you don't have to, carry it from the house out. But nonetheless, you can still have a bug out bag, right? Again, people like, oh, it's stupid. You should carry this little, that much. I'm like, man, you're just trying to carry it to get to the next fucking point B, and you need to have a point B. Like right now, I have like 3 point Bs. So if some shit goes down, depends on where that happens, will dictate where I go, or how bad it is. It will dictate where I go.
That's good, and I mean it makes sense, and I live out in the middle of nowhere at this point, and I still have bug out bags because the same reasons you said. You never know what might force you out of your home and how quickly that might happen. So, do I plan on bugging out as my main priority? No, but do I have the ability to if need be? Of course, and that's just something I think I wanted to kind of clear up, especially talking to somebody whose plan for bugging out is probably pretty high on the priority list.
Well, listen, I said in my live stream last week, moving out seemed to have the timeline for moving out moved up dramatically. So, listen, a lot of people here in the city seem to think that this mandate that happened today, they think it's going to die off. And after what the mayor said today, I'm like, I don't know, man. I think the world elites are going to hang on. They're going to hang tough on this one. And they're going to drop more hammers on a lot more shit, make life tougher for us. Therefore, we have to leave.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, eventually the justification is going to exist one way or the other. So if things aren't bad enough for the justification to be there right now, it's not hard to make them worse if they need to, right? And that's definitely something I think we should all be concerned about. I do want to jump into chat real quick, just say hi to some people. I mean, I see all the mods. Thank you so much for being here. I know a lot of the mods here are actually mods over on your channel too. So, you got to have good people helping out in the chat. It kind of keeps things moving smooth. And, I mean, people like to say terrible things about me, and that's fine. And I know that we all have our share of that. But, as long as we have good community and networking and stuff happening in the chat, I mean, that's really the best part about it. So I appreciate you guys helping us out tonight. Prepper Now, Northern Girl Hobbies, Kanzi, I appreciate you guys being here. I did see, real world preppers here. That's cool. Welcome. And if you guys, aren't regularly a big part of this community when it comes to the prepper community over here on YouTube, just understand that all of us have a different message and all of us have a different delivery. And I think that myself and the Angry Prepper are definitely good examples of that, but I think that both of us have an effect that helps get more people prepared. And at the end of the day, I mean, that's all that really matters because, man, I have really started, thinking lately, and I've talked to some of you all who have emailed me and sent me messages and stuff like that, that I really think preparedness can be a good way to kind of push people in the right direction, not just when it comes to being ready for an emergency, but just in the right direction for, like ideology and the way that, we should all be trying to maintain our privacy and our freedoms and our rights and everything else. And I feel like preparedness really helps kind of push people towards that because they start realizing they don't need to rely on the government or other people to survive. And then things start to change with your mindset at that point. And I feel like if we got more people prepared, we'd be in a lot better state right now than where we're at,
I agree with that to a point. I mean, yeah, when I first started prepping, I remember saying, man, we should spread the word to get more people prepared. But I'm at a point now, I'm like, fuck those people. I mean, listen, if you're not paying attention to what's going on and how bad what's coming is going to get, the government did a good job making people dependent on them. on all facets, whether it's actual food stamps or it's just the shot, for example, right? People are dependent on that now. People are running out of their way to do certain things to appease the government or to appease their celebrity friends. Nobody wants to get ready. Nobody wants to prepare. Everybody is worried about themselves and the BS that's out there. I would love to get more people prepared, but it's just not realistic. Everybody is worried about Kim Kardashian and the Rangers and the Knicks and the Jets if they ever become something. Like that's what people are concerned about. People are not concerned about their actual safety and well-being until their safety and well-being is threatened. And even when it's threatened, what does the government do? Steps in and says, "We're here to help."
Right. Which is a dangerous line, as a lot of people have said in the past,
Absolutely.
Well, and that's the thing, and especially, in the different environments that we're in, I'm in rural North Dakota, you're in New York City. It's true. If you've seen the things that you're seeing, especially where you are, where it's a lot more in your face on a daily basis, and people still aren't waking up to the idea of preparedness, it does make you feel like it's almost pointless to try to get more people involved, because at this point, people should be looking for it rather than needing to be, preached to, I guess,
Right.
I saw a couple super chats come in. Thanks so much for that, everybody. And make sure, if first comes first, if you need to be better prepared, make sure you're spending your money on that first, but I do appreciate it. And I do want to, mention a couple that came through. I saw them. Let's see. Thank you, Angry Prepper. I appreciate it. The Jerk 85 getting out of Chicago October 1st. Congratulations. I'm sure that feels good. And I'm not sure why this camera is not focusing right now, everybody, but I am working on it, I promise. And then let's see. Reload, Strength and Honor from Michigan. We got Irish Rebel, Carbon Q. I appreciate it. You guys, you're really big supporters here, and I appreciate everybody that comes through. But make sure you're taking care of yourselves first. These are tough times, and a lot of things are on our plate. And, don't feel like you have to send money our way when there's plenty of more preparedness items I think we could all get at this point. John Pander says, my camera needs coffee, so I'm trying. It likes the coffee. It just doesn't like my face. So I think that I've learned that radio was actually my calling, but I screwed that up, so it's fine. So, I want to kind of just get into what's happening out there right now and get some ideas from you, especially, like, how about your community post today? You were talking about the job listing on Indeed, right? And I actually read through some of those comments and thought there was some interesting feedback there. But at the end of the day, the idea that, this urgent need for, what was it, internment specialists?
Right.
Yeah. And then you have that mixed with all the banter and the talk going on around the interim operational considerations for implementing the shielding approach to prevent infections in humanitarian settings, which I did just read because I'm not that good at memorization. But like all of that's coming together, and we're starting to see a picture get painted. And what do you think is happening? I mean, do you think that, that job listing that you were looking at, is that representative of what's, happening in the sense of what's going on in Afghanistan and the expectation of bringing thousands of people over here to this country without a place to go? Or is that based on the CDC green zone stuff they're talking about with high risk shielding within communities,
It's funny because they were talking about bringing refugees over here, like as soon as that happened. And then that listing went up. And I was like, someone pointed that out to me because I wasn't thinking that. Someone pointed that out in the comment section. I said, that could be something. I said, all right, so they're bringing more refugees over here. And I heard a ridiculous number, like 20,000 or 50,000, something like that. And I'm like, wait a minute. So we have the borders that are open. We're bringing those people in here, unchecked. Okay, fine. They're our neighbors. They're a little closer. So I get that. But now we're flying in more refugees for what? Because they couldn't hack it in their country. So this is the country they automatically come to. And I'm not trying to sound like a racist or xenophobic or whatever bullshit they're going to label me, but enough already with these taking people in who don't have the balls to fight for their own freedoms. If you don't have the nuts to fight for your own freedoms, we shouldn't be the lifeboat of the world. I've said this 1,000 times. Eventually we're going to sink. And the problem is when you bring over people that have an entirely different culture from us. Eventually, they want their culture assimilated into ours, and it's not it's not the Benetton ad of, oh, look at this, we got this culture and that culture, and they're celebrating here. Eventually, these people will want their culture embedded in ours until ours is erased, and people don't get it. The Afghanis, the even I'm gonna even say the Hindus, Muslims, like these people want their lifestyle embedded in ours somehow, and they go often to whatever capitals in their state and bring it to the floor. I'm like, we would like this to be implemented, because it's our culture. Well, now you're impeding on other people's way of life, like trying to get rid of Christmas, right? There was a mall in Staten Island a bunch of years back. The Muslims in that area wanted the mall to take the Christmas tree down because it was offensive to them. I was like, fuckface, you were a guest here. Like you came here, you came to this country and said, I want to live free and not get beat, raped, murdered because, I have a different last name. So then you come here and what do? You start your same infectious shit that you started over there by wanting to change our lifestyle. I'm so tired and out on picking up these people from different parts of the world and having them come here and want to change our way of life.
Well, and obviously, I think the people who are involved or have been previously involved with legal immigration, they know that a big part of that entire process involves the concept of assimilating towards, American culture or the things that we find traditionally valuable here in this country. And, a lot of people take a lot of that on and they actually accept it as being, part of their new lifestyle because they want it to be here bad enough to go through the proper channels, which, is definitely, something we all can agree on as being, a good thing. But at the end of the day, yes, a lot of these, refugee resettlements and a lot of the people being rescued basically around the world, they get brought into specific communities. And because they get brought in all together and put into the same place, which they do on purpose in order to give them, people they can communicate with and people they can relate to and try to, give them some level of comfort, I guess, based on where they were from. It turns into its own, community versus it being part of a community. And that is a big problem. And you see that in places like Europe, especially in France and Spain with the NoGo zones and stuff like that. And I'm sure there's places here in this country that are very similar in that way that maybe just aren't reported on or talked about in the same way as they are in Europe right now,
Well, yeah. So I'll take Compton, for example, in California, long time ago. I don't know if it's still like that, but I knew that back in the days, not even me being black could walk into that neighborhood, certain neighborhoods within, or certain blocks within the neighborhood of Compton, right? So there was another area too in Oakland that was like that too. Like I couldn't even go in there. They'd be like, whoa, what the fuck is that guy doing here? And that you can call that no-go zones because it didn't matter who the fuck you were. If you weren't a cop, you weren't allowed to go in that neighborhood, right? Those were no-go zones that weren't unspoken of. But here in America, people are like, well, that's a black neighborhood, but we're not allowed to go there because it's their neighborhood. No, you if you were in Oakland, but you were from another block, you couldn't even go on, like, let's say 118th Street because you weren't part of that gang or clique, right? So those are the first no-go zones in America for a long time, and no one really recognized it until Muslims started coming here and making, like, was it Dearborn, Michigan, right? They have a huge community there, and that someone told me it's a no-go zone, and someone said not quite, not yet. Like you could still walk in there, but they might break your balls, they might not, So it depends on their mood. But we're going to have more of those here, and I think that is why they're trying to divide us even further. Whoever the hell is in charge of dividing us. And I think the division is part of that. It's getting us into our own respective corners so that they can take us over easier. Because right now, look what happened in LA with the anti-mandate march. Someone got stabbed, and they're undoubtedly blaming the unvaccinated, right? So they're breaking us up that way. Then you got critical race theory being taught in school, and for whatever reason, you got idiots saying, "Oh, that's a good idea because it'll teach us how bad we were to black folks, and we could atone for our." I'm like, "Shut up, you moron! That doesn't work that way. And then you have people who are divided on George Floyd, for example. That divided America as well, right? Guy gets a knee in his back. All right, whatever. So they're constantly dividing us like every day. And now, if you're unvaccinated, you're un-American. I think by the end of this year, we're going to see something really drastic pertaining to unvaccinated people.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's obviously being put out there in that way. And, my stance on that whole situation has always been that it's a personal choice. People need to decide for themselves, yes or no to any of those types of things. But being pressured into something like that definitely is something, that we were all told was a bad idea back in, school with the DARE program. So, but what I'm saying is when it comes to that, all I've seen lately, especially on mainstream media, which I do view and I do read just to kind of keep an idea as to like what is being put out there more so than actually thinking I'm receiving good information. But it's the blame is being placed on that group of people 100%. And there's a lot of top line, like headline news stories that are out there right now that say things along the lines of, this group of people is why we're still fighting this battle. This group of people is why we can't get past this next hurdle. And this group of people is why the country can't get back on track. And it's the demonization that we all know it leads to other things down the road. And that's it's a scary place to be. And whether or not you decided to get it for yourself or not, shouldn't make you okay with what's happening, regardless of your personal stance on it,
Right. And it's funny, I Googled the 10 stages of Nazi takeover. We're in stage 6, and that is what? Dehumanizing the unvaccinated, right? Telling us, well, these people are, like you said, they can't get to. Sorry, these people are not allowing us to get back to society because, and then they start with their mumbo jumbo and all other bullshit that like we're not even the reason why it's happening, and I hate the fact that they're not. Not that I hate, because I get what they're doing. So let me walk that back. It's not that I hate. I understand what they're doing because that's what the enemy is supposed to do. It's supposed to break down this country into fine dust so that they can finally just blow us off. Because right now, we're still, we might be breaking up, but we're chunks of rocks right now. And we could still come together and be a force to be reckoned with. But they keep breaking us down. They break us down to the chalk dust, and then by then it'll be done. But the stage we're in, when I was looking up the Nazi takeover, they said there's 10. We're in 6, and I'm like, and one of my buddies at work said that his wife was talking about it. She did this whole research on it, and when I saw it, I was like, oh shit, it's legit. So at what point now do we end up in these internment camps that they're building? Is the internment camps for us? Or is it for the high risk people that they were talking about from last year?
Well, that's actually the kind of the interesting part about that situation is that when you're reading the literature around it, it's all based on the high risk individuals, and we're talking about people with previous conditions or higher risk of receiving the sickness or whatever it might be, and a lot of those people have actually already gone out of their way and try to get protected from everything that's happening right now. And when you start seeing like some of those things implemented, if that ever occurs, they're talking about literally taking people and putting them in, a community house that's designated as a place for these individuals. And they're not allowed to leave, and people can only come in for a certain amount of time, a certain amount of space, and all this kind of stuff. And it starts really, making you think like, okay, well, even the people who are gung-ho on the other side of this argument about, yes, we want all the restrictions and all the things and everything else that comes with it, are they going to be okay with this when, their, husband or wife or father or son or daughter gets taken to this community house away from them because of their high-risk nature? You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny that again, I mean, the Germans the Jews went through the same exact shit, right? With being snitched on. Fucking Moish over there, he's across the street, still in his house. He doesn't come out in 10 days, but they tell the German soldiers come and pull him out. What I noticed though is that we're a little more aggressive in the snitching department, because we had people, and you saw it in the news and the media, we've had people who actually sat there and snitched out their family members for just going to the January 6th event. Just being
Yeah.
there, not being inside the building, just being there. And they called the cops or the FBI on their loved ones and got them in trouble through that, right? So now, being that we saw all of this stupidity, people, because they want their free. See, the thing with the difference between, I guess, what the Jews went through on us is that the media and the politicians are blaming us for actually causing bodily harm, which is the virus. And they're sitting there saying that, well, because of them, we're getting stronger variants now, which is like the complete opposite. But then people are like, well, I don't want to be locked down anymore. I want to be outside again. I want to go camping, all this other bullshit. And so fuck that. They have to take it. So now people went from being a free nation to wholeheartedly being okay with turning into a Nazi-style country just so that they can go see a movie or watch Garth Brooks.
Yeah. Well, and to make a point on what you're saying about the snitching aspect and the fact that people are willing to turn loved ones in just for even participating at an event, whether or not they were involved with any of the criminal behavior that they want to try to call it anyway. That's interesting, because this is all being done already without any incentive. And the only real incentive behind it is this social score that people try to basically, live behind at this point in time. And you see it on social media quite a bit, and you see it within our society. But people want to project this concept of themselves, and especially when it comes to having that righteous, indignation behind you of, well, I'm right because, everyone says that this was wrong. They're more than willing to put it out there that they helped in that effort because it helps their score, their status. So at this point, you don't even need monetary incentivization. You don't need, extra rations or any of the stuff that was being utilized back then. Like you said, back in, the era of World War II and before that with the Nazis and the Jews. People are actually willing to just do it because they want to, get a pat on the back. And it no longer even has to do with getting the hand up that was being offered in times like that. And even, like what was happening in Afghanistan, where, informants were, given incentives to be informants. There was, monetary as well as resource incentives that were being offered at that time. And of course, those people are definitely fearful now, I'm assuming. But yeah, we live in an era now where people are more than willing to just pick up the phone just so that somebody else knows that they're a good person,
Right. And it's funny. I talk about, it's interesting about that because people do want to just feel a part of it, right? So the whole narrative they're pushing now with do your part and protect your community and your family and yada yada yada. I'm like, really? We're going with that do your part bullshit? Again, Hitler used to say the same thing: do your part and tell us where these people are hiding, and you would be a service to your country. I mean, he obviously said it in German, but nonetheless, he said something similar to that. He said it numerous times. And now, here we are, people are virtue signaling with their Band-Aids on their arm or on their profile. They'll say, I'm vaccinated, and fucking, sorry, Instagram's the same thing. They're like, oh, I'm vaccinated. And it's funny how, they now pitting us against one another, right? Because that's what you do when you want to break up a country. So it's interesting that I thought of this while you were talking. They sit there and tell us that we are harming other people because we're not vaccinated, right? And that we are knowingly going out of our way to do that. And somebody went as far as to say, well, we should excommunicado them from society. Now, they didn't say excommunicado, but they said that we should be deleted from society. Now, look what the mayor did. De Blasio sat there and he dropped these mandates, and now I can't even go bowling, for example, or a pool hall because I have to be vaccinated. I'm supposed to be going to a photography show next month. I called them up to see what their was. They were like, you just have to wear a mask. I'm like, but this is more than 60 people. This is a big event. So, so I'm trying to figure out where that goes. But anyway, back to my point. They sat there and they're blaming us for something that has a 99.9% survival rate, right? Some people argue that it's actually the death rate is now at 1 point something percent. Whatever. Nonetheless, you still have a 98, 99% chance of survival. During the AIDS epidemic, the gay community were going out of their way to infect one another, and nobody at any given time said these people should be locked away for infecting others. But these people over here who are coughing on you and giving you, the virus, they should be locked away, or they should lose their license, or they should not be a part of society. But this group of people, it was okay for them to do that. I never thought I never thought that I would see, because I people told me, oh, they're gonna, make you guys the bad guys, and I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm like, I could see that happening, but I said, but the AIDS epidemic, these guys went out of their way to infect one another, nothing stopped, right? And now here we are, 2021, and now we're becoming the enemy of the country, and for what?
Well, and there's a lot of truth behind that, and I think that we're in a place right now where a lot of people are having a hard time trying to figure out how to navigate what's going on, because everything's unstable. I mean, last year showed us that nobody's job was safe. Nobody's income was safe. There was no guarantee that you could do the things that you were planning on doing. You didn't know if you could travel or go on vacation or do any of the things that any of us have been accustomed to over the years. And then, now we're morphed into this situation where you don't know if you're going to have a job if you don't take step A or B, and you don't know if you're going to be able to go to school, and you don't know if you're going to be able to, even just join the military, or a million other things that are out there that used to just be something that was just part of, growing up in America and being American. Now everything is a decision that you have to almost forecast and try to predict, how things are going to go in order to see if it's going to line up with what you're willing to do or not. And I did see in the chat, and I am trying to jump back in the chat. And just so you guys know, I do see that YouTube is like flagging like a ton of comments, and a lot of them don't really have anything incendiary in them, but I don't have a chance to like click on every single thing that comes through. But I'm just giving you guys a heads up on that. But I saw some people ask, and I'm trying to find it, but of course it's pretty far back at this point. But what I saw someone asking was, like how far is this going to go? And that's a hard question to answer, because things have changed so rapidly over the last year that what it used to look like 6 months ago has changed into something else at this point. And I'm not even sure. I'm not sure, how this all ends or where it heads exactly, but it doesn't seem to be going well. I know that much.
No. Hey, listen, it's funny how fast and rapidly it's changing. And the crazy thing is, again, we spoke. Well, I was talking to Prepper now about it earlier. This was in the making for a long time, and we were told this for a long time. And a lot of people, including a bunch of us on here, I mean, we were kids when we were told this. I remember hearing about this when I was probably around 15, 16 years old. From the book Behold the Pale Horse. There was another book out there. I can never remember this book, but it was along the same lines. And it was talking about the mark of the beast and the pandemic and all this other crazy shit. And I remember reading it and going, man, this is pretty interesting if this ever would happen. Again, as a kid, I'm like, hopefully not in my lifetime. 2021, here we are experiencing the same shit that were in those books. Now, I know a lot of people hate hearing this guy's name, but nonetheless, I always bring him up because he talked about it as well in depth. Louis Farrakhan. This guy talked about what's going on today in depth. And he said something along the lines, when I was younger, probably in my 20s, said something along the line of that people are going to be the undoing of themselves because of technology. And technology is going to turn around and bite them in the ass. And he goes, and with that, we're all going to suffer because of this new technology, whatever they're making. But anyway, he talked about the stuff like the market of beasts in depth. He talked about the world lockdown, the elites. And when he started talking about the elites, I was like, all right, maybe he's getting carried away. What, 20-something years later, he wasn't getting carried away. He was telling the truth. And yeah, people didn't like him because of his race rhetoric against white folks and the Jews. And I'm like, that sucks, because what he was saying, he was warning everybody. Now I don't know if he was he was trying to piss everybody off at the same time warning them, but nonetheless he warned people. The guy in the Behold the Pale Horse, he was warning people as well, and nobody wanted to listen. And now look, now everybody, like a lot of people, woke up too late, because this, what's going to get bad, it's going to get nightmarishly bad, and I think we're going to see something, I would say, atrocious by the end of the year. That's going to kick off the next 5 years of the bullshit that we have to face.
No, I mean, and it makes sense. It does feel like things are going to get more difficult here shortly. You know what I mean? And I'm not necessarily sure that we're going to find ourselves in a better situation anytime soon, which is why, obviously, preparedness is becoming such a big deal for a lot of people out there, because it doesn't look like there's an easy way out. And so one of the only options is to be ready for it to fall apart, or at least, feel like if things get worse, that you're in a decent situation rather than having to rely on help or whatever might be out there available at the time. One thing that, I often think about is, with everything that's going on, we obviously are also seeing a pretty large increase in crime, especially in places like New York City. So do you think that, I mean, obviously there's parallels when it comes to what's happening in the world and what's going on for the average person, and especially anybody who might be desperate living in a large, metropolitan area. But I was looking at some of the numbers, and it's saying like overall crime went up like 3% in New York City last month. And then, most of it was driven by like robbery and larceny and stuff like that. But those were all up like 30%. And do you, as someone who lives there, I mean, is this something that you're just like seeing and feeling on like a daily basis? Like, is this just like part of kind of like life there at this point for the average person, or is it still kind of, over in its own areas, or kind of like hidden away still?
It's funny. I grew up in, clearly I grew up in the city, right? I went through the 80s and 90s, and the 80s and 90s were full of violence and crime, and people getting mugged, beat up, raped, houses burned, cars torched. And now the way I'm rambling off about it, it wasn't happening like that, but there was enough crime back then that you were like, oh man, New York City sucks. And then it got better. The crazy thing is that the bad times are here. And it's going to get way worse. People are going to be really shocked how bad the crime gets here. But it's getting bad, but I'm comfortable with it. So I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing, that I'm comfortable with the violence and I'm comfortable with the bullshit that's going on. Where I'm not comfortable with it is when my kids are outside, or I'm with the kids, and now I'm not comfortable with it. But when I'm outside on my own or in fire truck, I'm like, this is normal, and I shouldn't feel like that. I don't know, but it allows me to adapt to situations when they pop off without being shocked, right? So, for example, I mean, you said you live in North Dakota, right?
Yep.
You come to the city, you see some shit go down, you're like, holy shit, what the fuck is that? And like in that 2-3 seconds it took you to fucking realize what was going on, that's 2-3 seconds you could have ran away, you could have ran to help the guy, you could have, took your kids out of the situation. And the city life affords me that reaction, which it's not a good place to be, and it's not a good mentality to have. But nonetheless, it allows me to adapt. Again, they're like Maria Jackson. She said she grew up in Detroit, so she has that same mentality. And I'm comfortable with it, but I know that they're people, man. They come here and they're like, "What the hell is that? I'll never come back to the city." This guy pulled his pants down, and you're like, "Oh man, that's why he won't come back to the city." For that. I said, okay. I said, but listen, if you're not used to the crime, it can take you back. A lot of people who have guns and shit, those gun states are like, oh, well, I got this and I got that. I said, even still, some of the shit you'll see will still shock you to the core because you're not used to it,
Yep. Yeah, and I've spent some time in big cities, San Francisco, Oakland, LA. And when you do see those things and you're not used to being in that area, I mean, it does shock you. It takes you off guard, and it's not something you expect. So I do think that there's probably some kind of normalcy bias for the people who live there, which is why it seems so, outrageous to people who don't, especially on the news, when you say, oh, people can walk around naked in San Francisco now. I mean, if you live in San Francisco, you're probably like, well, they always did. They just can now, I guess, but if you don't live there and you go there the one time and see a naked person, then suddenly you're not sure what's happening anymore. So I could definitely see that being the case. And guys, I want to get in the chat and hang out and talk to you guys better. I just haven't had a chance to because we're having some good conversation here. I did see a couple other chats come through. And I know a lot of what's going out there in the chat, at least, is that everybody's pretty much on the same page. That, regardless of your thoughts on whether or not you feel one way or another about, the different choices we all have to make right now, everybody feels that that's exactly what they should be as a choice. And that's the big part of what's happening, is that people are not feeling like they can make the choices they want to make for them and their family due to the repercussions that follow. And for some people, especially when we're talking about, income, it's really hard for people to step back and say no to their income stream. I mean, how do you say no to your job when it's the only thing you can rely on and take care of your family with? But your job might be able to say that you have to comply or find somewhere else to work. And it's easier said than done, as many people will say, well, I'm gone tomorrow if that's what happens. Well, I'm glad you're in a situation where you can do that, but I can't assume everybody is,
It's funny. My stepson, spoke to him today. And yesterday. I spoke to him yesterday by the firehouse because he lives over there. He lives in the Bronx. And he was like, oh, I said, you take the vaccine yet? He goes, no, I don't want to. He goes, but my job is, it's making me, take it. And he goes, I really like the job. And that's his first real job he's had in a long time. And he wants to keep it. I said, then, dude, you're going to have to do what you have to do. And I said, I don't like it and I disagree with it. But, I mean, you're a grown-ass man now. So you got to make a decision that's going to affect. You need to make a decision that's going to better you and your kid down the line. And I don't think that that's the way, but I also can't tell him don't do it. If I was a way that I could employ him somewhere on my own, I would have done it right then and there, but unfortunately people are going to have to make that decision. Everybody who's like, yo, I ain't taking shit, I'm leaving. When you cross that bridge, that's when you're going to know whether you're a shit talker or you mean it.
Right.
I have to be honest. Would I be running out the door with my 21 years? Yes. But if this happened and I had, let's say 5 years, I don't know what I'd be thinking. I don't know if I would have turned around and took the shot, or I don't know if I would have been hardcore about it, right? I mean, the one aspect that I have, the channel is affording me the option not to take the shot and bounce, right? But if I didn't have the channel and I was only on the job for 5 years, what would be my mindset? So it's easy for me to sit there and be like, yo, I'm bouncing because I'm in a better position. But there are people who are not in that better position, and they have to think about it and be like, yo, taking the shot and then not knowing what the long term is, that's probably going to worry you for the rest of your life. But being that we're also going to have to take booster shots, that long-term effect is now going to get closer, because I guess the more you load your body with the crap, the more susceptible you are to having a bad reaction down the line. And I think that's the bigger problem. But people are going to have to realize that you're not just taking this one. You're not taking this one time. You might be taking this for the rest of your life because they said so. So now, do you break balls and say, fuck that, I'm not taking a shot? Okay, but then what are you going to do for work? Right? How are you going to support your kids? So,
no, it's a tough. And for a lot of businesses, I think something a lot of people need to understand is that the turmoil and the economic implications that a lot of these businesses fought to survive through over the last year, for them, it's easy to just say, hey, everybody, you just need to do this so we can get back to work, or else we're not going to have a company anytime soon. And if everybody could just get on board and get past this thing, we can stop hemorrhaging and losing money and get everybody, back to usual business, because a lot of these businesses are desperate and have been made, borderline bankrupt from the last year and everything that happened, especially when you're talking about smaller businesses. But, you know, when you're talking the restaurant industry and bars, and you're talking about clubs and all movie theaters, all the places that were, you know, targeted, especially in the very beginning of everything, they've been, you know, they're hurting. They've been hurting ever since, and they're not going to be able to make that money back for a long, long time because of how small the profit margins is that they operate on. So for them, it is, you know, in their mind, probably easier for everybody just to go through and get this done and get it over with so we can get back to work, you know. And it's easy to see why people fall into the camp of just, you know, just do it and get it over with so we can go back. But a lot of times when you see it in that perspective, you're not seeing it from the perspective of trying to, you know, save lives. You see it in the perspective of trying to, you know, get back to business, which, you know, at that point, is that the same intention it originally had? Of course not, you know. So
Yeah. Yes, it is, and it's, you know what, that's the thing too. I mean, everybody is, like you said, everybody's talking the crap about, oh, if you take it, we can get back to normal. We could do X, Y, and Z. Well, guess what? Now people are taking it, and they're still having either an allergic reaction to it or still catching COVID. So it's like, damn, not even damned if you don't, because you don't have to, you know. But they're making it. I mean, it's becoming an impossible situation now, because they're like, well, if you take this, we'll get back to normal. All right, fine. So now people are taking it, but now they're still having outbreaks, and now they're telling people who are fully vaccinated, well, you know what? You're gonna have to put a mask on. We fucked up. We screwed this up. You got to put a mask on. And now people are like, all right, okay, we'll put a mask on. Well, how long is it gonna be? Indefinitely. Oh, okay. So then you're like, all right. So now, well, you know what? Put a mask on, and then you're gonna have to social distance. Matter of fact, we're only gonna have 10 people in the store now, social distancing with their mask on. But I'm fully vaccinated. That doesn't matter anymore because it's still spreading. Those damn unvaccinated people, meanwhile, nobody unvaccinated has been in that store because they can't go into that store. But yet they still blame it on us, right? Then, so back to the loop, it's a bad place to be with this whole vaccine thing, because I don't know why people are thinking that this is the way. And yet there are multiple studies that they keep drowning out, saying otherwise. Like the ivermectin thing. I saw this video on it. I thought it was pretty cool. And I'm not going to get into it, but the lady laid it down on how much better it is for us, and yet they still pushing this crap.
well, you know, and there's a lot invested in the entire system, and not just in the sense of, you know, money, and in the sense of you know, the actual resources being put out there, but there's a lot invested in the reputation of the people who are very, you know, adamant about being correct about everything that's being put out there. And that is a huge part of what we're dealing with here is, you know, pride. And I think we, at least as just average people, is something we've all come to realize over this past year, is that the people that we've had in charge of all these different programs and all these different initiatives, you know, didn't necessarily have a solid plan in place of like what to do when this all occurred. And this is the fallout of that lack of planning. And there's a lot of people involved that aren't willing to admit being wrong about anything at this point. So you're going to have a lot of adamancy moving forward that, you know, everything we did was the best we could do, and it's exactly what needed to happen. But in the response to everything that was going on at the time, I think we can all, you know, agree that there was clearly no clear direction. It was just, you know, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and, you know, we're going to try a bunch of different things, and here we are now, you know. And I feel like there's a lot of that getting in the way of things actually truly improving. You know, when you have the big corporations that have invested all the resources, effort, time, and money into everything that's going on, and you have all these people in high positions saying that this is the way, then it's hard to come out and just about face and say, you know what, actually, no, we're going to do something else. And so I think even if there was a better solution, or, you know, even a better way of going about this, it wouldn't necessarily be put out there at this point because of what that would look like, you know?
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And so I guess, and I've seen this in the chat a few times now, but I guess people aren't, I guess we're cut off from super chats at this point. So I don't know what we did, but something happened, I guess, apparently. Or at least that's what I'm seeing in the chat. So
what do you mean?
I don't know. It's like everybody's getting an error code and no one can do it anymore. So that's kind of funny. But I think that's just nature of the beast sometimes at this point. You know what I mean?
I think that's fucked up. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, um, no, it looks like they're coming through now. Okay. So I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on, but we definitely know that in this realm that certain conversation definitely gets a keen eye assigned to it. And I know a few people are saying they're getting an error 404 code or something like that. And I just thought that maybe meant that we got flagged on our conversation here. And not that we're saying anything incendiary, but
No.
I think you and I have both been involved with the bad side of being on this platform at times,
Yes, and it's funny because I mean, listen, they were flagging channels for like home remedy stuff, and this is years ago. I'm like, imagine, like sitting there and this channel is trying to tell you a better way and how to, take care of yourself and maybe slow cancer down or maybe slow down Alzheimer's or maybe, like all these different things. And they got rid of channels for talking the truth. I'm like, what the fuck is that about? Really? So now they went into overdrive. They're like, oh, you don't like this? Canceled. You don't like that? Oh, you think that this is bullshit? Canceled. I'm like, where the fuck did they? I mean, like, the freedom of speech is gone, and people are like, well, it's YouTube's platform. But YouTube started out on freedom of expression and freedom of speech. That was the reason why they started out. And then they somehow turned around and made it about themselves and said, well, we will decide what we want to put on and what we want to take off. That sounds like some fucking very, totalitarian kind of shit, man. Like,
and it's one of those things where the whole point of information is that you're supposed to digest it and make your own decision, right, at the end of the day. And that's all a lot of people are out here trying to do. I mean, you and I could argue on the best way to start a fire for survival purposes, but somebody can see both ways and then say, all right, well, that way works better for me. And that's exactly how this is all supposed to work, and unfortunately we're no longer in that territory anymore.
No.
And you and I both deliver our message differently, but I think we both do what we have to at times in order to say what we're trying to say without causing ourselves problems, because that is also part of the situation where, like I know you've talked about moving to like Rumble and some other platforms and stuff like that, which of course don't have the same size audience or reach as this platform does. But so while you're still operating here, in order to maintain that message and still talk to people, you have to, do a little bit of a dance. And, for your situation, I think it's a good idea that you have the other channel as a backup, and another way to kind of express your more focused opinions without worrying about what it does to your main channel. And if you guys, if any of the mods can put the Angry Truth channel in the chat, I mean, I think that's another good place to go, get more information about some of the stuff we're talking about tonight, where things can be talked about a little bit more freely, I would say, right?
It's more of a freer speech It's the sacrificial lamb. It's the channel. I'm like, I'm gonna say what I want, and if they, give me a strike or they take it down, I'll start another one. So that's where I am. But it's funny, like with the Angry Prepper channel, I do try to behave with that channel because the message of prepping is where I want to stand. I think that's a little more important than a lot of the shit we talk about. Though somehow, some way, the other shit that I'm not supposed to talk about, and I'm supposed to save it for the Angry Truth channel, winds up seeping out on the Angry Prepper channel. So I've been lucky with the Angry Prepper channel. A lot of the shit that I've said and done. So I don't, and I'm learning that there's a line with YouTube, and I've been testing it out on both channels and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I got it. I got their formula of getting away with certain things and not being taken down.
Yeah, and there is a line, and actually, for a lot of my content, I'm actually learning what that line is when it revolves around firearms content, and that's something that I've been, lucky enough to talk to other creators about and kind of get some ideas on. And man, there is like a formula you have to follow to a T if you want to be able to do what you want to do and talk about what you want to talk about. And there's all these little nuances you have to avoid. And I mean, it's just crazy, but at the same time, like, it still gets good information out to the people who want it. So for me, as somebody who wants to kind of, maintain what I do here and share more of that information, it's something I'm spending the time to learn how to do correctly. So that way I don't find myself, just shut down at some point. And that's unfortunately where we're at. And it shouldn't be that way, but it is,
Right.
And I do want to say there's a couple chats, all the super chats that came in. Thank you guys so much. I mean, I just saw some chat about that earlier, that there was error codes and stuff like that. So I do appreciate you guys checking that out and letting us know what's going on. Mountain Kayaker, says fight for your rights. Of course, and that's a place that we might find ourselves in the relative future here. And I did see someone that had a question for you. And actually, okay, so as Jonathan Mai says, what is the subway like? Is there mask required? Is there crime? Pirate DVDs?
Pirate DVDs.
Yeah.
He went back too far. And he took that back to the early 2000s. But crime is I don't hear much crime in the subways anymore, since they were shoving people in their tracks like hotcakes, and then they sent all these cops down there. I haven't heard much. I mean, there's still some fights and stabbings, but nothing. I mean, I guess you would consider that crazy, but I wouldn't call that crazy. You have to wear a mask in the subway. Last week I was on the subway, and I was the only guy in the entire station with no mask on. I got on the train, and I was the only guy on the train, at least the 2 train cars that I could see. I was the only guy with no mask on. I'm like, this is incredible. Yet the cops saw me and they didn't say anything to me. Because what are they going to say? They're going to pick a fight with me not wearing a mask. Meanwhile, above ground, it's the Wild West, Homeless people are taking a shit in the middle of the streets. People are selling what they want to sell. Guys are stabbing each other for fucking looking at each other the wrong way. And they're going to break my balls about not wearing a mask. So the cops are pretty good with that. But it's still a mandate in orders. You still have to wear a mask when you're in the train. For those who'd like to submit, you have to wear a mask. Me personally, I'm like, fuck that, I'll do what I want when I want, because I'm done. I'm done with listening to their rules and listening to the BS. It's just like, enough already. There's certain supermarkets too. Like I'll go in, like now that they're trying to implement it, and like this last supermarket, one of the guys was like, "Do you mind?" I was like, "Yeah, I mind. Leave me alone." And then that was it. He was done. He left the conversation on. But the time that he was looking at me to say something, it took him 2 minutes too long. Like as opposed to walking up to me and like, "Yo, X, Y, and Z," he took too long. He was like thinking about it. Should I say something? Shouldn't I? And because he gave me time to think about my response, when he walked up to me, that was my response.
That's what happens. Yep. And I mean, it's got to be an interesting situation, especially when a lot of law enforcement don't necessarily support a lot of the things that they're being required to enforce at this point too.
Right.
I think that's probably pretty prevalent. And like you said, when they see the bigger issues going on right on the streets, where all the actual crime is occurring right there and then right in front of them, and there's a lot of times situations where I'm sure their hands are tied. It's got to be hard to get all gung-ho on things that they might not feel are life-threatening in that moment. I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like I want to say a year ago at this point, and probably longer, we were all discussing that whole concept of like new normal, right? And it had a lot of negative connotation around it for obvious reasons. But even where we're at now, I mean, this is far beyond what like that whole new normal concept was, I would assume. I don't think that people really realized what we were heading towards in that moment. And it's kind of fun when you look back like a full year. And, even recently I was looking through some of the older content on the channel, and I'm like, man, a year ago, we're talking about this. And then here we are now. And like, it's worse than that. And actually, people are being put in way worse situations than what we even expected,
Yeah, it's funny, right? When you look back on all the things we said, you're like, you look back on all the things we said, you're like, that's interesting, because now we're like in a different boat. And I think next year we'll be, we would absolutely be in an entirely different boat next year. I think, listen, there's a lot of things coming down the pipe, man, and it's hard to figure out what it is. Like, maybe 40, 50 years ago, when they tried scare tactic, it was one thing that they focused on, like the Cold War, right? They focused on that and they beat it in everybody's head, and Russia was bad and they're going to attack us. They're going to drop a nuke on us any minute now. Meanwhile, like, you know, Russia wasn't like, they were thinking about it, but it wasn't their everyday play. But now, 2021, they have multiple things scaring the shit out of you. You got COVID, you got the vaccine, you got these new diseases, not variants, diseases popping up, and they're concerned about. You have the climate change effect, happening all over the world. You got all these things that they're trying to scare us with on a constant basis. It's like, you know, now they're what are they doing? They're wearing us down. They're waiting to see if we crack. Like, what's the end game? Because I've never seen so many things thrown at us at once.
Well, and, you know, I think that especially last year, there was a lot of thought that a lot of this was kind of part of the election, right? Like that the election was going to have some kind of like an end result in the sense of everything that's been going on. And yes, all the things that surrounded that, you know, were what they were. But now we are in a situation where that's passed quite a bit now in the sense of time, and we're still dealing with a lot of the same problems that were before it. So, like you said, it's like, what's the play now? You know, because originally, you know, a lot of people could have looked at what was happening and said, well, this is obviously, you know, in order to favor one party over the other during an election cycle. Now we're in a situation where are we heading on this? You know, because that's supposedly, you know, said and done. Now what?
Yeah, you're right. Where do we go from here? And that's the thing. I'm not trying to overthink it. I think that's the other problem that a lot of us are doing. I'm just waiting for whatever's coming to happen, and then I'll adapt to it. Because, you could rack your brain out trying to figure out what's going to happen. You could sit there and be like, oh, what is it? Is it aliens next? What's going to, asteroid going to strike? Fuck it. What will happen, and we will adapt to it when it happens. Trying to figure it out is stupid. You know, like people said, oh, August 11th, something bad's going to happen. Well, August 11th came and went, and I think August 11th could have been the beginning point of whatever the hell is about to break out, or we're just headed towards a new road, if you will, of more crap happening.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of like when you look at what happened, you know, or what's going on in Afghanistan right now, and you can easily look at that in different ways and say, you know, well, they're obviously, you know, they need the troops back because of all this crazy stuff that's about to go down. But you can also look at it as, you know, well, it's a failed campaign that just had to end at some point. And either way you look at it, it has, you know, a negative aspect to it. So you're right. You can rack your brain on like why or when or how. But it is a big part of preparation is that we prepare so that way whatever does happen, we can pivot and be ready for. And
right.
And I think that's something that Alaska Prepper was very adamant about the last time I talked with him was, you know, regardless of what's coming our way, the best thing to do about it is to prepare because there's not a lot we can do to stop the train that's already moving at this point. And I mean, I think there are things that we can do and might have to do at some point in time to maintain, you know, what it is that we care about. But at the same time, I don't know if we're going to have some kind of unifying, you know, signal that tells everybody that that's the moment, you know?
Well, I hope people figure out when that moment is, because nonetheless, I think what we're going to have to do isn't going to be good. And we're going to be labeled the bad guys, without a doubt. But we have to be comfortable in going down that road. Because I don't know, man, the stuff that we are seeing now, let's not even talk about what might be coming, what we're seeing now. I think that is a precursor to what's to come. But then, you know, hopefully everybody's on the same fucking page at that moment. And when it happens, everybody's like, this is it, you know, and then when we do what we got to do. But the other side of that argument, if you will, is the frog in a pot syndrome. We are being roasted pretty fast, but slow. So we're watching all these things change, but it's happening so slow and our freedoms are still here. So we're like, do we really want to fight because we can't go to restaurants and diners? people are like, nah, we'll skip this one. And then, okay, do we really want to fight because they're not letting us in the restaurants? We can still order online. It's not that bad. And then they go, all right, fuck it, the next one. And then till what? Till we're sitting in a camp. Do we really want to fight because, well, we're in a camp, but they're still feeding us? Nah, fuck it, next one. Like, where does it stop? And at some point, we got to realize that this is going in that direction. And before it gets to there, we have to stop it here. And that's the problem.
Yeah, no, and that is the hard part, is figuring out how everybody's gonna come together at a certain point and react. And this thing really hates me right now. It loves my cup, but it hates my face. One thing that just came in, Gray Man Prepping, how's it going? I just saw you pop in. And Prepping Outside the Box, I don't know what you guys were exactly talking about, but basically the conversation was about if people aren't aware of like how important being physically fit is when it comes to being prepared, at this point they don't know what to say, right? And I know that you're a big like fitness proponent, so as somebody who like goes out of their way to maintain a physicality, like what's your suggestion to people when it comes to like fitness, like even just somebody who wants to just get started? I mean, how important is it for somebody to be in a good physical state, and how important do you feel it is in the sense of like priority when it comes to preparedness?
Fitness is above all. I mean, if you have shit health, let's dial it back and talk about health, right? People need to be healthy. And that doesn't mean you need to put on 3 bug out bags and walk 8,000 miles. No, but you need to start eating right to get your body at the optimal functioning capacity to work out, right? If you're always eating junk and you're always eating crap, you're always going to be tired, run down, and feel like shit. If you're eating like crap and you're working, 13-hour shifts, 7 days a week, you're always going to feel like shit. If you eat better, you'll feel slightly better to work out. Working out is going to help you in so many ways. I mean, they just did a study in South Korea that came out saying that if you work out, you can absolutely combat COVID. So either you'll get mild symptoms, or if you get severe symptoms, you'll survive it. Now, the study was 40,000 people, I think, and 40,000, I guess, South Koreans, and they took 40,000 of them to work out. I forgot how many days it was. And they found that those who had gotten COVID didn't have any severe cases. Zero. They did get symptoms like, runny nose, sneezing, but none of them were severe. And they said that could be the shot we need to stop the BS if everybody does that. But in realistic terms, not everybody's going to do that. Now, for preppers, that's going to get us through a lot of stress. Working out, it's going to afford us to do things we've never done before and do it longer. Sorry, right? So if you work out, if you walk, for example, and now you have to bug out, your body's going to adapt to it a lot faster than if you never walked a day in your life, and then you have to bug out, and all of a sudden you get 4 miles in and your feet are cramping up on you, your legs are cramping up on you. So for preppers, we need to work. We need to work out. We need to stay healthy because you want to keep your immune system healthy, because you don't want to rely on a doctor that might not be there. That's another reason why you want to stay in shape. You stay in shape, you're sick less. And for preppers, that is the key thing to be, is healthy so that you're not sick. So you're not trying to find a doctor in the end of the world situation because you got a cough or something that got out of hand had you not been sickly.
And that's actually really important to consider. I think a lot of people in the preparedness community, know how important fitness is and know how important health is, and it's still a hard thing for us to conquer because of just the way our lives work. When you try to balance work, school, or family, or whatever else it might be, and then try to fit in physical fitness, and then also try to diet and eat healthy. I mean, it's difficult. It actually takes a lot of energy and motivation to do it, and it's something that I've struggled with over the years, just because it's time, and time is definitely hard to come by sometimes.
Yeah.
and I don't know, man. I do think about it though, like on a regular basis. And lately, I've been able to work out every other day, which for me is kind of like a good schedule because it's kind of keeping me sane and not feeling like I'm burning out and stuff like that. But getting on that treadmill and doing weights and everything else, a lot of that is in the back of my mind, just purely being motivated by the idea that I can't be as prepared as I want if I can't even run a quarter mile. And and it's just how I feel. So using that motivation and thinking about other people in the prepper community and how often they've preached about fitness, and I'm like, it helps kind of keep me in line and kind of push me to do more on it. And I just think about how many people don't necessarily consider it as being as important as it probably is.
Well, I tell you one thing, in the prepper community, it's a no-go conversation because, like, you'll watch other preppers do videos on it, and that is the lowest scoring video they have. People are like, I don't want to watch this video because then it's going to force me to get in shape, and then they don't watch it. So it again, in the prepper community, everybody thinks that their guns are going to save them. You might get into a fist fight. If you are not physically fit, you are not going to win that fist fight. It's that simple. The gun might not always be there. The gun might jam. You might drop it. You might have to go hands on. And then if you don't have the grip strength to choke the dude out, or you don't have some kind of fighting style to ward him off to get to your gun, your physical fitness level needs to be there so that you can use it as a backup plan in case your gun fails, or use that as your forefront and let your gun be the backup plan. I mean, however you want to choose. But we need to get into shape.
Yeah. No, 100%, and it's definitely, it's just another, like a lot of people like to talk about, especially related to firearms, is the force multiplier factor, and being fit and ready to defend yourself, even just in a hand-to-hand situation, adds that level of multiplication for you. And look, everyone knows in the community too that not everyone can afford fitness. Some people are limited based on disabilities. Some people aren't able to because of health and everything else that's related to it, and that's totally understandable. But I do think it's something that we don't talk about very much for the reasons we just stated. And even though I do what I can to try to be in a decent shape, I still wouldn't want to fight you. So there's that. So I see a few more people are coming in, and we are at an hour and 17 minutes. So I know that we're probably going to wrap it up here relatively soon. I know I don't want to drag it on the entire night, but the conversations have been good so far, and it's hard to kind of get off of them, when we're, rolling along. And I want to make sure if anybody has questions or anything, guys, make sure you put it in the chats. And, if you want us to answer anything for you, that way we can kind of, help give you any ideas or advice or suggestions based on, what it is you might need, or even just let you know our opinions on certain subjects. Obviously, things are a little dicey these days when it comes to the different topics that we have to discuss. Shelly from the H says, what about pets? The biggest thing about pets right now is to be prepared to feed them long term. Right now, pet food is having shortages in all different departments. Feed for your livestock animals is also facing shortages. A lot of that is, it's agriculture, but it's also shipping and all the issues we're having with even just getting things delivered. But I think a big thing that we don't talk about very much is, yes, you can stockpile pallets of dog food if that's something you're concerned about, right? Maybe you have dogs. But there's other ways to feed animals that don't require like the store-bought food. And sometimes, when I'm looking at my preps, I consider the things of like, should I just be spending the money on additional food preps that are good for both me and my family that I can also utilize to feed the animals if need be, rather than just, separating the two and then in one way or another. And this is going to sound bad, I guess, but in a terrible situation, you have the decision where you can at least decide on, who's going to eat versus who's not going to eat in that scenario for a longer term, situation. I don't know if that's the best way to say it, but you know what I'm saying? If I can eat the food, then we can still eat the food. But if it's dog food, we're not trying to eat dog food. That's what it comes down to. And there are a lot of things that you can do to make your own dog food, and a lot of foods you can put away that you can feed your pets with, And a lot of people will say things like when it comes to cats and stuff like that, of course, well, my canned tuna does both. Well, great. And that's what I would be looking for as well. So that way I have that much more food that's edible for my family and I, rather than just separating it and then, maybe finding yourself eating dog food at some point because you bought too much of it. I don't know.
That would suck though.
Yeah.
Eating dog food. Ugh.
Yeah. No.
You ever tried it before?
Yeah. I've been curious once or twice.
I don't like it the first time. Let me try it again. Oh, it's so bad. Yeah, I tried it. I tried it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because I was stupid. But then I tried it again. Actually, I tried it 3 times. So the first time was I was a kid, so that was complete stupidity. The second time was Mad Max movie. When he was sitting there eating the dog food in the Road Warrior, right? And I said, how bad could it be? He's eating it, and I ate it. I'm like, oh. And then the third time I ate it again, this was probably like 10 years ago maybe, saying, could we eat dog food if we had to because we ran out of regular food? And no, we couldn't. There's a couple of nutritional issues with us eating dog food long term that would screw us over in the long run. But yeah, I'm out on that. I would almost turn to Spam at that point and eat that before eating dog food.
Well, and that's kind of what I was trying to say is like the money spent on all that could just be additional food that you can eat. And then you just need to know that maybe you'll need to ration some of that for the pets or make those decisions down the road. Because if you're at a point where you have to decide if you or the pets are going to eat, I mean, the food is already obviously in a very scarce situation. So those are decisions you might want to be able to make. And, it reminds me of an old video on YouTube a long time ago where that guy ate dog food and was like, oh my God, he was like, oh, this is the fancy stuff. It should be good. And he like took one bite and immediately threw up everywhere. Right. And I'm thinking, yeah, I don't think I want to switch, middle of starvation in a survival situation to food that's probably going to make me throw up, because then you just made yourself, go back 2 steps. So
right,
just things to think about.
Yeah, it's funny because I did it just to see, like, yo, could I do this if I had to? Now, obviously, you could, but again, the nutritional value in it is bad for us, and it wouldn't work long term. If you did it for a couple meals to get to like the next meal or whatever it is, maybe, but I would definitely not do it long term. It would be bad for us.
Right, 100%. And I do want to say that I really appreciate everybody in the chat. I want to make sure everybody knows that. Like, I know I missed a lot of questions and a lot of stuff tonight, and it's just hard to kind of see everything coming through. But hopefully the conversations we're having is giving people different ideas and different, opinions on what decisions are coming down the pipe. And I think a big part of preparedness is mental preparedness, and being able to know you're going to have to make these choices before you're forced to gives you a lot better chance to plan properly and be ready for that time to come, rather than, be in a situation where you're backed into a corner and not sure, fight or flight, basically. And a lot of people might be, finding themselves in that scenario here very soon. Let's see here. Just seeing if there's anybody else in here. I appreciate it. All the support, everybody. Very, very appreciative.
Sundance Kid 64. I'm gonna do a reaction video on the Yuri Bezmenov video from the 80s. That's, if you haven't seen it, Google his name, and at the first video that pops, you should watch it, because what he says in that video is exactly what's going on, and what has been going on for the last 20, 30 years. Most of us weren't hip to it, and some of us that were recognized something was wrong, but didn't know why. This guy explains it.
And I actually got sent a link to that video by somebody from the channel. So I appreciate you guys giving that info out and sending us like emails and stuff like that, because it's nice to just get things, directly sent to you, and help stay up on what's happening out there. So I'll be looking forward to that reaction video, because that should be interesting. Okay, and then let's see. Barbecue goat is really good. So is barbecue rattlesnake. Thank you, Miss Me, for letting us know. And let's see. Looks like everybody, is kind of just giving us some tips and some ideas about things we should check into or maybe talk about here. But I don't know. Is there anything else you kind of wanted to address to the community here? I know we share a lot of the same people, especially in the live streams, but at the end of the day, there's probably newcomers here that haven't seen you before, and hopefully get another perspective on prepping. So, what would you want to leave people with in the sense of, like advice that you might have for them?
Like two advice. One is just, I mean, like we've all said it, every last one of us, every prepper channel, keep prepping and stay strong, because what's coming down the pipe is definitely meant to break us mentally. So physically, right now, I think we're physically they're not going to do anything yet, but mentally they're beating the hell out of us until we break. That being said, guys, you have to stay strong. Secondly, if you guys are newcomers and you're coming to my channel, I curse a lot. So if you don't like cursing, I'm not the channel for you.
Yeah, and I can verify that. And obviously, everybody's got a different way to deliver the message, guys. And I don't think it takes away from what you put out there in the sense of advice and opinions. So definitely suggest you guys go check out the Angry Prepper. If you don't already know, you should definitely know. And make sure you check out the Angry Truth as well, which is his other channel, to kind of dive a little bit more deep into topics along the lines of politics and stuff like that. So it's not all just about preparedness. But I mean, honestly, great chat. Like, I appreciate you coming over here and hanging out with everybody. I think that everybody has to make a lot of decisions here coming soon, and it's not going to be an easy road we're all on. So no matter who you are, where you live, or like what part of the country you're in, or even if you're in a different country, do what you can, network, build community, and just realize that there's only so many of us out there, and at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot more of the Marauder types going around. So and we didn't get to talk much about Marauder stuff tonight, so that's fine. But we had to throw something out there, But thanks to the mods. Thanks everybody for keeping it chill in here tonight. And if you have anything else for me ever, you can contact me right on magicprepper.com. If you need anything or anything like that, I'll do my best to get back to you. And as I always say, I can't read every single email, but I will do what I can, and eventually you'll see a message come back from me. If you guys need anything else at all, let me know, and then I'm going to do my little thing, because it's the thing I do. But if you have nothing else to say.
No, I'm just reading the things. No. I'm good.
All right, man, good. Well, then that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.